This episode of Policing Matters is brought to you by Lexipol, the experts in policy, training, wellness support, and grants assistance for first responders and government leaders. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's LEXIPOL.com. Hey, welcome back to Policing Matters on policeone.com. I am your host, Jim Dudley, and I've got a good one for you today. Well, imagine waking up to find your home invaded, your partner kidnapped, and being told that you're under surveillance. For Aaron Quinn, this wasn't a scene from a movie, it was a harrowing reality. The story begins on March 23, 2015, when Aaron Quinn called police to report his girlfriend, Denise Huskins' abduction. He claimed that he had been tied up, drugged, and told he was under video surveillance, but police were skeptical. The details seemed too bizarre, almost like a Hollywood script. Well, given the similarities to the plot of the 2014 thriller Gone Girl, investigators initially dismissed the case as a hoax, but as events unfolded, it became clear that this was no fabrication. Weeks later, Denise Huskins resurfaced, claiming that she had been released by the suspect. It wasn't until a separate investigation by another agency revealed new evidence that the truth began to emerge. And joining us today to discuss the investigation and the lessons learned is Lieutenant Misty Carausu from the Alameda County Sheriff's Office, with nearly 2 decades of experience in jail operations, patrol, investigations. Lieutenant Carausu played a pivotal role in untangling the truth behind the case. Welcome to Policing Matters, Lieutenant Misty Carausu.
Thank you, Jim, for inviting me on your show, and I'm super excited to be talking to you today.
Great. And we have another guest, but we're going to reveal that guest after our break, or maybe just before the break. So, Lieutenant Carausu, you're working as a detective in Dublin, small contract city in California. When you were assigned this case, tell us about your involvement and how you first became involved.
So it was probably a few days prior to me actually starting as a detective that I got a call from the investigation sergeant who said, we had a home invasion in Dublin and we know where the suspect is located. We are going to be executing a search warrant in South Lake Tahoe where he may be. And if I wanted to pack a bag and go up there with them. And of course, I said, yes, why would I not take that opportunity? So I packed a bag. I told my husband that I was going up there. He said, be safe and have fun. And seriously, the rest is history. The team and I drove up to South Lake Tahoe, and my responsibilities were to collect and process evidence because I was a certified evidence technician at that time. And we executed the search warrant. My lieutenant, before this was his last search warrant before he retired, he got to key the door. We made entry, and the suspect, Matthew Muller, was actually located in the house and was arrested on site without any use of force. He didn't want to speak to us, but yeah, that's basically how I got involved. And then at the house, I collected various items of evidence, and something about that house was very creepy to me, I guess. To the normal citizen, it would look like a hoarder's house, but to investigators or true crime fanatics, you would look in these boxes that were strewn about the house and go, what's all this masks? What are these ski masks for? What are these gloves for? What are these ropes for? And then, so you start thinking about that, not only as like an officer, but something just doesn't seem right, especially given the circumstances of him committing the home invasion in the city of Dublin. All of these were basically fruits of a crime. So we collected as much stuff as we could at the house. And then we went over to a tow yard because we were informed that El Dorado County Sheriff's Office located a stolen white Mustang in the nearby area of Matthew Muller's house. And on the driver's side floorboard was his ID. So he had his California driver's license, left it in the car, and we went over there, executed the search warrant on the car, found a lot of items of evidence. One specifically that has made this case huge was inside of a nylon belt, there was a pouch. And in that pouch, I pulled out a pair of goggles that had been blacked out with tape and duct tape. And attached to it was a single strand of blonde hair. And I thought, oh my God, like our victims didn't have blonde hair. So
Let me stop you right there. This is a good place to stop because to our listeners and our viewers, I don't want them to be confused that you were up there on the case that I initially described, right? The kidnapping and the guy tied up and all that. You were there on it's a home invasion, but it was a lower level home, if that's possible, a lower level home invasion, not with a kidnapping, but um, some similarity, but not. I mean, you're driving up nearly 3 hours from Dublin to South Lake Tahoe. You're not thinking about the gone, I hate saying it, but the Gone Girl kidnapping. You're just like, okay, it's a attempted home invasion. What are you guys talking about in the car? 3 hours.
so for 3 hours, I was just learning about the suspect. And you're right, I didn't even think about the Vallejo case at that time because so many months had passed. Um, but we were just talking about who our suspect was. We knew that he was a Marine. We knew that he was an ex-lawyer who studied immigration law in the Bay Area. And basically just talked about our operations plan and how we were going to execute the search warrant, make contact with the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office, and just plan how we were going to navigate this whole entire process. Um, but yeah, the reason why we found all of that information was because during our home invasion, Matthew Muller left his cell phone. And so he was so meticulous and organized that he had placed all of his items that he was going to use to tie up his victims out, the duct tape, the zip ties, and his cell phone. And he was not expecting our elderly male victim to fight back. And so he did. The elderly victim yelled at his wife to go get the gun. Knowing that she didn't have a gun, she knew what that meant. So she grabbed her cell phone, ran into the bathroom, and called 911. So our dispatcher was actually talking to his wife at the same time he was fighting Matthew Muller all the way down and outside and out of the house. And
Mm.
Matthew Muller drives away. And this is prior to me getting involved. Our investigations teams located or realized who the phone belonged to, and that was Matthew Muller. So it was pure insanity. Had no idea about the Vallejo kidnapping case at that time. I was just still trying to process the fact that I was getting to go up to South Lake Tahoe to execute a search warrant.
Yeah. So you get up there, you get the stolen car, you find all this evidence. Again, the genius left his cell phone at one location. Now he leaves his ID at the other. And you found these goggles and the hair. So why was the hair important? Didn't match any of your victims.
It didn't match any of my victims, but it also told me that this wasn't like, who did the hair belong to? Like, was it, this could not have been his first home invasion. And it just seemed like it just was out of the, who did the hair belong to? We had another victim. This was not his first case.
Right.
Based off of the evidence that we located, he seemed pretty sophisticated in his planning. And why did he have a nylon military style belt with a pair of goggles located in a pouch? Did not make any sense to me because not an average person would do that. So I was very concerned, and our team was that we still had a victim and we didn't know if she was alive or dead at that time. So
Right.
it was very important for me to do the follow up on the evidence, but also to locate who that hair belonged to.
Yeah. And ultimately you did. And then you discovered the involvement in the Vallejo case. Now we get into the sticky wicket where it's hard to criticize even somebody within your own agency, much less somebody from outside another agency, and how they conducted their investigation. And you heard at the introduction, they thought it was a hoax. They went to the media and said it was a hoax. And in reality, it happened. And through that hair connection, you connected the kidnapping, sexual assault, and everything else that happened in that home invasion in Vallejo. What kind of pushback did you get? Anybody from your own agency saying, yeah, maybe we should, keep this on the QT? Did somebody from the other agency criticize you or ask you not to reveal anything? How'd that go?
I wouldn't call it pushback. I would call it more hurdles that you have to jump through. Initially, the people I contacted, they just said, oh, like for instance, Vallejo PD told me that were no longer working the case, that it was the FBI. And so then when I contacted the FBI, I told them exactly what we had, that Matthew Muller was in custody. Um, so it was more hurdles than anything and trying to get a hold of people and have them return my phone calls. Um, Obviously, like I'm a little bit pushy when it comes to answering the call, like just pick up the phone. I have been told in my career that I do the most, but if I didn't do the most, then who was going to do it, right? Like
Right.
I know my investigations team at Dublin was working on the Dublin case, and my job was ultimately just to do the follow up on the evidence. So they had their guy in custody, so it was just, I don't want to, like I said, hurdles.
Sure, sure.
And it happens in law enforcement, but you just have to continue to push through those hurdles or jump over them if you are a track and field person.
Sure. Yeah, so the hair did turn out to belong to Denise Huskins. You made a great case. All the evidence was brought forward, successful prosecution. The suspect, Matthew Muller, was successfully convicted of kidnapping and other crimes and was sentenced to over 3 decades in federal prison after pleading guilty. Denise Huskins and Aaron Quinn married, began to get their life back together. But just last year in 2024, another bizarre turn in the case appeared. And now I'm going to introduce Seaside Chief Nick Borges to talk about the latest revelations. That's a teaser because first I'm going to ask to take a break and hear from our sponsor. Lexipol empowers first responders and public servants to best meet the needs of their residents safely and responsibly. Serving more than 2 million public safety and government professionals in over 8,000 agencies and municipalities, Lexipol offers a range of solutions that includes policies, training, behavioral health resources, news and analysis, and grant assistance services for law enforcement, fire and rescue, EMS, local government, and other agencies dedicated to public safety. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's LEXIPOL.com. And we're back, and I'm speaking with Lieutenant Misty Carausu from the Alameda County Sheriff's Office and Chief Nick Borges, who is the police chief of the Seaside, California Police Department. And Chief, that's about an hour and a half south of Vallejo, south of Dublin, approximately.
That's correct. Yes.
Well, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. Chief Borges has been with the department for 22 years. He's served as a field training officer, detective, corporal sergeant, commander, deputy chief, and SWAT commander. and he is also a graduate of the FBI National Academy, Session 277. He'll share the insights into the recent developments linking the suspect, Matthew Muller, to other earlier crimes. Welcome, Chief Borges.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, great to I've seen news clippings, I've seen you in the media talking about the case. Now we've explored the initial investigation from Vallejo. We heard about that attempted home invasion in Dublin. Let's fast forward to the recent revelations about Mueller's earlier crimes. Chief Borges, your department played a key role in uncovering this new information. Can you walk us through the events and how they were discovered?
Absolutely. Let me just start off by emphasizing two key points that are important to I know Misty and myself. Number one is a lot of people have said there are similarities in the movie Gone Girl and the case involving Denise and Aaron Quinn. And I just firmly disagree. I think I've seen that movie. The only similarity there is the fact that there's a blonde actress and Denise is blonde. Outside of that, it's really just fiction. There's no, in my opinion, similarities at all. And that's why I refer to it, and as does Misty and many others, as the American Nightmare, because that's truthfully what it is. And just to emphasize what you started off here on this program, I just don't want to take away the light from Misty. Misty's work and effort in doing this is heroic. What she has done here is incredibly important to this case. If it were not for Misty, none of this would be happening. Who knows where Denise and Aaron would be today? So I always like to emphasize those 2 points. And then I'll kind of jump right into how Seaside got involved and really credit the people who deserve the credit. But essentially, this is a case I've been following from afar. I'm not part of the investigation, but I've been following this case since I was a sergeant back in 2015. And there were some things that always bothered me. And when I was a detective, as you mentioned, and by the time I was a sergeant, this case came out when there was a press release or press conference, rather, where the lieutenant talked about, he never said the word hoax, but he insinuated that this was a staged orchestrated event, demanded that they apologize to the community. In my mind, I said that there's got to be a smoking gun, because in law enforcement, it's very unlikely that police are going to come before a public conference, let alone a national stage, and say something like that unless there's a smoking gun. And also in law enforcement, and Misty can back me on this, when we do have a smoking gun, we have a really hard time. As much as we pretend that we're going to keep things quiet, we have a hard time of not just dangling that right in your face. And and I told my team at the time, I remember saying, we're going to know what that is in about 24 hours. And that was almost 10 years ago. I'm still waiting for that smoking gun. I'm not waiting, but you know what I mean.
Sure.
Didn't happen. So I knew within a day, the fact that that had not been made public of what this evidence was that involved them, something was wrong. And then later on, once Denise and Aaron did a press conference with their attorneys, you can just go back and watch that, and it's unmistakable. Their body language, their demeanors, their energy. I knew at that moment, whatever they're saying is the truth. And I felt like that from ever since 2015. So I've seen documentaries on, I think 2020 and Dateline. Again, these are cases that I follow regularly. I watch these shows every week. And when this came out on Netflix, I didn't recognize the name, but as soon as the story began, I knew exactly which case this was. And because I have 3 children, my youngest is 4. It took me 2 weeks to watch a documentary when it should have probably taken me maybe one sitting. But after about 2 weeks of getting through all this deep dive, really, in the documentary, I just felt, now being a police chief, that I was obligated, and more importantly, as a human being that's in law enforcement and a chief, to reach out, or at least try to reach out. And I really expected no response from Denise or Aaron. I just wanted to let them know that I've always believed them, that I support them. There's others in law enforcement that I know support them, and kind of just leave it at that. And I didn't hear back from them for, it was probably about a week or so. And then Denise responded first, and she was just so kind and welcoming and thankful. I was surprised. I was expecting, she's a better person than me, as is Aaron. I don't know that I would have responded. But that really started the conversation of us having a training session. There's more to learn from law enforcement. We really, not just the general public, but police, we have to learn from this and be better. And that led into a training session. And that's where I got the ability to meet Misty. And then the El Dorado DA heard about it and he attended. And he and I had a conversation ahead of time about how passionate he is about making investigations, in particular interviews and interrogations, better, because there's so many false confessions and so on. And that really led to a really widespread, there was 300 plus law enforcement officials. And if you listen to Denise and Aaron to this day, in their book, in the series, when they do public speaking, they always talk about more than one suspect. They don't ever refer to it as just Muller alone. They talk about kidnappers and they. So during lunch, we struck up a conversation, and they really got into detail with some of their concerns about others being involved and how they really didn't know where to turn because they're not in law enforcement. And I just kind of offered my help. And then after that, working with Misty and Denise, and primarily it was us talking and kind of bouncing things off each other. What's the best approach, going to visit him or trying to pursue other avenues. It was decided that with the permission of Denise and Aaron, that I would write some letters, and working with Misty, Denise, and Aaron, having them review what was going on, giving good direction. I credit them. I feel like I'm just kind of a middleman, just trying to help out. And I just want to point out one thing is someone asked me this recently. They said, well, I just don't understand how Seaside is involved. It's not your jurisdiction. And this is somebody in law enforcement, mind you. And my response is very simple. I genuinely said sorry to them when I met them about what they went through from policing. Sorry is nice. I even say it's cute, but without action, it's meaningless. And I'm a very loyal, very hardworking person, just like Misty. So when I say I'm here to help, I'll do anything I can. And in this case, being someone who doesn't have jurisdiction, who can't directly investigate, I could certainly reach out and flip rocks and try, and we did. So that happened. I started sending letters around April of last year, about a month after I met the team. And within a couple of weeks, I got my first response. And he commented, and really my mission wasn't to find out everything he did in other cases, even though everyone that has seen his behavior understands that he's likely involved in many things, and we're learning more. But it was really to see if he'd be willing to discuss with Denise and Aaron, through me, whether or not he acted alone or with others. Because my view is strong. Anyone and everyone, not just with Denise and Aaron, anyone and everyone that engages in this type of violent criminal behavior should be accountable. I don't care if they're the person who dropped somebody off somewhere, if they're the person that just high-fived the person after they committed the crime. Everyone that committed a crime engaged in their case and others must be held criminally accountable. And that was my mission. And he opened up, and he, again, I don't know if I believe him fully, but he reached out saying he acted alone. And in my opinion, he was portraying himself as being vulnerable and credible by exposing himself to other crimes he had committed that he had not been convicted or charged with. And that was his way of telling me, I'm being honest about acting alone in their case. And to prove that to you, here's these other cases that I was involved with. And he opened up about in great detail about the two Santa Clara cases from 2009. One is in Mountain View and the other is in Palo Alto. Those were talked about in the documentary of American Nightmare. But something that came out of that, he references it, and one of the letters he tells me Misty would know about this, which we talked, and nobody knew about this because it was never reported. But 2 weeks after he released Denise, 2 weeks, this monster goes into a unincorporated area of San Ramon in Contra Costa County, and essentially does a home invasion, kidnaps 3 people, forces one of the people to go to a bank and get money for him. And they never report it because he's saying some of the same things about he's involved in a crew and he'll harm them and he can have them killed and all these other things that he said. Mm-hmm. So I credit really my communication with Matthew Muller has been through letters, and those communications continue today. But Vern Pearson and the FBI. Vern Pearson is the El Dorado district attorney who has jurisdiction where Denise was held captive for 2 days in 2015. He has really taken the lead with the FBI's cooperation in a lot of these investigations, and some of it ties into his jurisdictions, and a lot of it is tying into outside jurisdictions. So he has been instrumental in communicating information that he has received, because he actually went to the prison with the FBI and interviewed Muller, as did Santa Clara County officials. So they have a lot of information, and they're doing the investigations. But we talked a little bit about earlier about culture. We talked a little bit about challenges in law enforcement. And as a police chief, I don't want to just single out an organization, because I know how sensitive police departments and organizations get. But I'll speak as a law enforcement official and someone who's made plenty of mistakes in my career as a leader. We get it wrong sometimes. Sometimes we get it really wrong. And in this case, law enforcement, something that I am part of, got it wrong. The right thing for us to do now as a community of law enforcement is to say just that. We got it wrong, but we're going to learn from this. We're going to be better. We can't let this happen to anyone else. And because of that, we're going to train, we're going to analyze what we did, and we're going to give back and try to help and learn all these lessons and take action. And what you're seeing right now is happening with the collaboration of Misty, myself, Vern Pearson with the DA's office, and the heroes in the case, Denise and Aaron. If they were not persistent, if they were not gung-ho about trying to find out more, really none of this would have happened. They would have come to a training seminar. I would have offered them the best, training opportunity I can for the attendees and them, treating them with respect. But because they were persistent, because they opened up to me, which I'm very honored, because they trusted me. Besides Misty, outside of Misty, I don't know if they trusted anyone in law enforcement. Maybe Aaron's brother, I'm sure of that, but I don't know that they would trust anyone else outside of that small circle. So
Yeah.
honored that they trusted me.
Excuse me. Chief, is there any indication that there's a continuing investigation? Has there ever been a third person DNA recovered from scenes? Is there anything that we can hang our hats on to say there was definitely a third party involved?
No, that's still being looked at, and that's a big part of it, is that there's no proof either way that he acted alone or acted with others.
Okay.
But we do know he said he's acted with others. We do know he did things that are consistent with him acting with others. And most importantly, Denise and Aaron saw things and heard things that would indicate there is a strong possibility and likelihood that there are others. And if there are, they need to be tracked down and held responsible or turn themselves in.
So I would imagine that Mountain View, because of the time delay, that they're treating these cases, the Mountain View and the Palo Alto case, as cold cases, recovering things from those initial reports and going backwards or forwards till now. The suspect, Matthew Muller, is not your typical offender. Reports suggest, and I read in that article from Seaside, that he was planning crimes as early as 16 years old. Chief Borges, can you share anything that we've uncovered from his background, that early age?
Well, very clearly, a lot of people have said he suffers from mental illness, and that perhaps his time in the Marines is a result of his acting out and so forth. But that's easily dispelled when we learn. And again, this is just what we know. It could be more, but in 1993, and I won't get into too much detail because I know this is still under investigation in a different jurisdiction. But we do know in 1993 that he did a similar attack on a couple when he was only 16 years old. Wow. This long before he went to the Marine Corps. And as I've heard Aaron say publicly, he was in the band at the Marine Corps. I don't know that he was in war, but I know he was in the band. So he was doing things long before he was ever a Marine. And whether or not there's mental illness, we know that he is dangerous. We know that he is calculated. And in my strong opinion, this man is a threat to society, and he's somebody that can never, ever be released to the streets. He's a threat.
Absolutely. And, Chief, I want to echo your sentiments that I don't think any of this would have been revealed if not for the tenacity and the perseverance from our own Misty Carausu, who went into the investigation with open eyes. I mean, one hair sample caught her eye. I don't know that, out of 100 people, how many people would have, thought to say, wow, this isn't from our victim. And how can we, trace this to some other victims? Lieutenant Caruso, you went in there with open eyes, even with skepticism was high from other agencies. Human nature often leads us to draw conclusions. I think we err on the other side of this, right? That we sometimes believe, drug dealers who say they're the innocent victims of robbery or other cases like that. And sometimes, okay, well, the joke's on us. In this case, um, you took everything at face value, you investigated it, you processed. How can law enforcement officers guard against that tendency to just sort of, they were accused in the OJ trial of the rush to judgment, right? That was a meme at that time. How do we avoid that?
I would say it starts with the basic academy and teaching them about confirmation bias, about being objective when you are involved in any interaction with community members, victims, and even suspects. Our job is not to judge, our job is to collect and present evidence. And I think we need to consistently remind ourselves through good, effective leadership and a positive culture that we just need those reminders. It's so important. Anybody can spiral down the cynicism rabbit hole, but to be effective and not let everyday, negative sides of society get the better of you, somebody or yourself has to internally reflect consistently, and always be open-minded, always be open-hearted, and remember that we're working with humans. This is a human profession, so we cannot allow toxicity to overrun us, especially in law enforcement culture. So it starts with the basic academy with lots of training, a lot of dialogue, a lot of proactivity with community engagement, and just being open, and definitely the self-reflection, because I'm not perfect, like Nick's not perfect. There have been instances where I have felt disgruntled or, whatever, but really the ultimate reason why we do what we do is to protect and serve and provide to our communities. So I always tell everybody that I work with, we wear our badge with pride and purpose. Don't ever forget that is a gift, right? We are lucky that we jumped that 6-foot fence and took that oath and can provide these services to our communities. And never forget that. I feel like we tend to forget it over the years. So training, culture, and never forget your purpose. Those are the three things that I live by right now.
Yeah, and training's gotten better. We're hearing more from advocates about trauma informed, victim informed interviewing techniques, listening, active listening, things like that. But Chief Borges, I want to ask you about supervision. So Misty says, hey, be accountable for yourself, be open-minded, use the training, follow the training. But at some point, we're in our own little echo chamber, hearing ourselves talk. At what point should supervision come in as with fresh eyes, take a look at the chronological order of investigation and say, you know what, we might want to take another look at this.
Yeah, I think Misty just said it very well, and her organization did a very good job in the Dublin case. I've had the privilege of reviewing that case, and they did a very good job. But here's the missing piece: you have Misty in here, who is like a doghound trailing a lead, and I didn't sense that there was a lot of support for her doing that. In my opinion, I haven't talked to her in depth about this, but in my opinion, it's like she was a lone wolf out trying to piece together something that she knew based on her own life experience, training, instincts, something. There was more to this. And supervisors need to celebrate the Misties within your organization. It's very easy to isolate the Misties in your organization because they stand out, because they perform very well. Those who just perform at the basic level and just get by and collect a retirement, that's easy. Anyone can do that. My kids can do that. But the Misties within your organization need to be celebrated. They need to be supported. And when they're onto something, they need to be protected. They need to be told, go get them, do what you need to do. You're not going to have great policing unless you let your people really pursue things that they know are there. And it's really basic. Being a human, being a good leader, and support your people and let them do what they got to do.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I appreciate your time. The both of you, busy schedules, Chief down there in Seaside, Lieutenant Carausu there at Alameda, and the expanse that you have over there on the east side of the bay. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your reflections on this extraordinary case that just the ripple effects are just astounding. I would imagine Muller is going to be looking at decades on top of decades in prison once these other cases come to final fruition. Today's conversation highlights the importance of persistence, collaboration, keeping an open mind in investigations. Misty, I know you've been celebrated. I talked to the president of NOLI. She can't wait to meet you. And I know you are a mentor over there in Alameda for all of the Alameda County sheriffs, but especially a mentor to the young women joining the ranks there. So good for you. Thanks so much for taking time today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. I mean, this kind of perseverance really paid off. Anytime you get a case, there is that natural tendency to drift to that, Occam's razor, that straight line. If it's this, it must be this. But we've got to be open to any possibility. And I hope you're all doing that. So drop me a line and let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you think about today's guests and the topic. And what were the questions that I didn't ask that you're dying to know? Drop me a line at policingmatters@policeone.com. That's policingmatters@policeone.com. And thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And hey, stay safe. Hope to talk to you again real soon.